It's wild stuff, you know. It's deep, beautiful, powerful stuff. I don't know how much I'm teaching her or how much she's teaching me, but
definitely
it's
makes
nice.
you want to be the best you can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes you want to be the best person to pass that on to them. Absolutely.
Yep.
Rewrite. New life, new beginning. Hi, I'm Jonathan Unthank, music director at the Light FM, and today we're going to hear from Mac Powell and Sean Curran about Jesus and how their kids are teaching them to walk closer to the Lord. So I've got Sean, and I've got Mac.
Yes.
And man, it's just hanging out, talking about Jesus and what he means to you.
I can promise you my story's a lot more boring than Sean's. I can promise that.
I don't want it. I can give you the first thing that came to mind for me was like encounter is something, it's kind of a remarkable thing that God gives us.
Yeah.
You know. So I did grow up in church. I was very much a church kid. All of my life revolved around the rhythms of church life and community. But when I was 8, truly, I was just riding my bike through the neighborhood, and it was on a Sunday, so it was after church, but like I was just riding my bike and became overwhelmed by the presence of God. You know, I didn't know how to talk about that yet, but I had all these stories in me. I had all this kind of sort of God talk percolating around in my life, and I enjoyed all of it. I liked church and everything, but I just remember riding my bike, really feeling like God was close to me. And I got off my bike and just like sat in somebody's yard, you know. And I just remember having this, I mean, I'll get really emotional thinking about it, but I just remember feeling this overwhelming sense of my need for God. And I became really grateful for what I understood that he had done for me. And I just told him I'm sorry and that I love him. And that was my first,
Wow.
That was like, I just met God, I think, you know.
Just that first experience of
Yeah.
like, I've never experienced this before.
Yeah.
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 And it became more of an experience, not just knowledge.
Of course.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say, like, as an 8-year-old,
Sure.
how much knowledge I had either. But I remember an element of surrender, like, definitely happening for me when I was like, I think this is what it means to be alive. Like, and I'm going to do whatever my life is going to be like, this is the compass. Like, I remember feeling that way and just kind of handing it over. There's a lot more to the story after that, I guess. But, yeah.
Man, that was the begining point.
Yeah, yeah.
That's cool. Mac, what about you, man? I mean, just the beginning point.
Yeah. You know, I have a kind of similar thing. I'll rewind in a second, but one of those experiences for me is like we used to have, I grew up in this little town in Alabama in the middle of nowhere, and I lived on a dirt road and went to this real small Baptist church that was miles from where I lived, and it was even more in the middle of nowhere. And I do remember, when Sean's telling that story, I remember as a kid, we would have this cottonwood tree in the front yard, and we didn't have a lot of trees, so it was kind of stood out. And I remember as a kid climbing that cottonwood tree and going up, which felt for me was really high, which was probably about 6 or 7 feet in actuality, if that. But I always just thought, man, if I climb up in this tree, that's where I went to pray and just like if I had something going on and I needed God's help, I'm going to climb this tree because I'll get closer to God if I climb up the tree, right, and get closer to the sky. But as an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, somewhere around them, had gone to church. My dad was in the military, so we moved around a lot from when I basically was born until about 5 or 6. And then when we settled down in the little town that my dad grew up in, this Clanton, Alabama, a little middle of nowhere. And so about 7, 8 years old, I started going to church for the first time. And it took a while, but after a while, hearing those sermons, I remember sitting on a pew, and this is like a real small church. So if there's 100 people, that's packed out. That's Easter and Christmas. You know, that's how small a church it was. But I remember hearing the sermon which I'd heard many, many times before from the pastor, but just going, he gave an invitation. And I said, I believe this. I believe that Jesus died on the cross for me. There's no other way to get to heaven but through him. And I know even as an 8 or 9-year-old, whatever it was, I'm a sinner that needs to be saved. Mm-hmm. So I got up by myself. Nobody else was going forward as a little kid, and mustered the courage to walk up front and talk to the pastor.
Yeah.
And then the next week I was baptized, and I believed it. I believed with all my heart I was saved. Mm-hmm. But I also went through, I just remained a baby Christian for a long time. Back then I called it the fire insurance. It was like they're like, oh, you're saved, you're good, you got baptized. It was kind of like you got to get baptized.
Yeah,
that was so much more important than to people than the actual salvation. Mm-hmm. And so I just was a baby Christian for a long time. My senior year in high school, it was a month before I was about to graduate. I was scared to death of being a real adult and having to go out into the world and get a real job or I didn't make good grades. So I was like, I don't know. And we couldn't afford for me to go to college. I didn't have any real skills. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I was scared. So I started just really praying and saying, God, I need your help. I know I've kind of strayed away from you a bit, and I was still going to church, but just was just doing my own thing. And I remember somebody at church saying, you should read the book of Romans. So as I'm praying, I'm opening up. I didn't even know where Romans was. So I look in the index or concordance, whatever it is, at the front of the Bible to tell you where it is. I was like, oh, New Testament, all right, cool. Turned to it, I started reading the book of Romans and just went through the whole thing. And God's Holy Spirit just filled me and reminded me of that decision that I made as a kid, reminded me that I wasn't living up to my end of the bargain. And even though, I can't earn that by anything I could do, I also knew that there's a responsibility with calling yourself a Christian and giving your life to Jesus. So I realized my life was not completely surrendered to him. And so started from then on.
Man, so you got years of knowing the Lord and riding this life, the ups and downs of life. In where you are today, how does he show up as a friend in your life? How do you see Jesus as a friend now? Because you've had that initial experience, and then it's just like, he is who he says he is.
Yeah.
He's never let me down. You look back and you see those monuments, so to speak, that the Bible talks about, where it's like, oh, you showed up here, you showed up here, you showed up here. How does Jesus show up in that area like that?
It struck me what you said about fire insurance. I think I'm in a place in my life where maybe a lot of our listeners are, where I had the gift of meeting God at a young age. I'm now in a place where I've been walking with him for a lot longer than I haven't been, And one of the gifts that Jesus as a companion is, for me, is that he isn't just interested in getting us into heaven. He's interested in getting heaven into us, And for him to be my friend is he's encouraging me to be his student. And for me, like, so much of the transformation in my life for the past couple of years is just trying to see him as Jesus of Nazareth, the rabbi. I want to be an apprentice under the Son of God. Make me like you. What is it? Am I able to point to the fruit of the Spirit in my life? What is, I lead worship a lot, I think I have a pretty good handle on what it means, what revival means in a room or something like that. But I think Jesus is trying to teach me what revival means as a father, as a husband. That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
That's good, yeah. I think for me, man, honestly, I want to be with him. So, when you have somebody that you love, and whether it's a friend or a family member, it's like you go, like, I just reconnected really with one of my best friends of life. And we, a few years ago, he moved, and so we lost contact. We would still say hey every once in a while, but like really, truly kind of reconnected again, spending more time talking on the phone, seeing each other, and so that's what I want daily with Jesus. I try to, I don't get to every day, but I try to walk every day, and that I usually walk for about an hour, and I usually probably get in for at least 4 or 5 days a week, and that's my time with Jesus. That's what I really want to. So I'm looking for Him in that time, and not just that time, but that's the special time.
Yeah.
Where I go, let's meet, let's talk, and a lot of times it's mostly me talking. I got to learn to shut up every once in a while and listen more, but I still desire that. It's like that scripture, taste and see the Lord is good. I've done that. I've seen us. I don't want anything to get in the way of that. I want it more and more every day. And I tell Him, just like as you were saying, approaching Him as a teacher, as a rabbi, it's like, Lord, help me to be the man that I need to be, that I should be, that you want me to be, and that I can be through your strength and wisdom. And so that's like my prayer for myself. And I think it's a good thing. There are times in my life when I've been or at least felt a lot closer to the Lord, to be open and honest with you. But it's like, it doesn't worry me in those times when I'm not, because I know He's not leaving. It's just a matter of me figuring things out and, and surrendering those other things that have gotten in the way of that relationship. So
I was talking about the same thing just a little while ago to someone else. Was He doesn't change.
Yeah.
He's the same. And just for us to realize that, because our situations are they're going haywire, from time to time, depending on, you just had some graduations going on, didn't you? Or some changes.
Well, like not senior graduation,
Yeah.
but 8th grade graduation.
8th grade,
Kids,
yeah.
I've got kids in college, kids in high school, and it's there's a
different transitions into
absolutely,
life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's the fun stuff, but it's also can be the frustrating stuff and the stuff that makes you. Those are the things, honestly, that do keep me coming back into Jesus, because I need Him more and more every day.
Well, you were talking about your family too. You know, you're in that phase of we're trying to figure things out.
We have two kids.
How old are they again?
Yeah, 2.5 and a 6-month-old.
There you go, man. Yeah.
So we're us, and we're also. So my wife and I, we've been together for almost 15 years, and we just started having kids a couple years ago. So it's just a whole new world for us.
It's fun. I'm so old. My kids are about to start having kids.
That's amazing. Yeah,
we got some wisdom to pass on.
Yes.
And that's one thing that I'm thankful for, is just brothers. You know, just the body of Christ is where we're here to remind each other of who He is, because we can get into our zone and we're going and doing and great things, but it's like, man, when's the last time we just thought about Him and what He's done for us?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's just like, that's been my thing recently, and that's why we're setting this time up. At Momentum, is just like, man, let's just talk about Him.
Yeah.
Well, like one of the things that has really struck me recently is, I'm a young dad. I'm thinking about my kids in light of who I know I want them to be, and who I want, how I believe Jesus wants them to be. And it's like reactivating some stuff in me that I didn't realize maybe I've let go of. Or in one of those things is just like honoring the beauty of simple little prayers. Just I want, like, how many times I'll eat a meal without saying thank you. And now all of a sudden I have this little 2.5-year-old, and there is this spirit in me that wants to teach her that. But at the same time, I'm like, man, it's been a little bit since I've thanked the Lord for a meal. It's wild stuff, It's deep, beautiful, powerful stuff. I don't know how much I'm teaching her or how much she's teaching me, but
definitely makes
nice.
you want to be the best you can be.
Yeah.
Makes you want to be the best person to pass that on to them. Absolutely.
Yep.
your phase in life now with kids growing up and new transitions and stages and all that. What do you hope to pass on to them just from what you've gained in your relationship with Jesus?
Well, it's I don't know if anything ever really changes in the sense of, it's one thing that I've learned is in life. Let me rewind a little bit. When in the third day days, we would have these meetings and we'd talk about all this stuff, and I would get so frustrated because I'm like, we talked about this 10 years ago and 15 years ago and 20. Why are we talking about the same junk over and over and over? Why can't we just get this figured out? And then I realized, you're never going to figure it out, but you never stop trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I know that sounds weird.
I get it.
But it's like, I realize there's so much stuff in life, I'm never going to get it figured out, but you don't stop trying to figure it out. And I think it's the same with our relationships, whether that's with the Lord or with our family or friends. It's like, I'm tell people all the time in regards to what we do and being musicians, and that's our job and our ministry and all those weird kind of parameters that together, I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
I haven't figured it out, and I'm never going to stop trying to figure it out. I'm just thankful that I get to have a family. So thankful that I get to sing about Jesus and have great, conversations like this. As you were saying earlier about brothers just encouraging one another. It's like we get to do that all the time, and not everybody does. I mean, there's a lot of times we can kind of look down on what we do, and because it's business and ministry and like that whole weird thing, and I'm sure there's a lot of church leaders that feel that way, but it's like most people don't get that privilege of getting to their constant conversation is about the Lord, and that doesn't get old. That part doesn't get old. So I don't know. I'm kind of rambling now, but moving on.
Try it on, Sean. Young dad, and husband as well. So it's double duty. It's you're growing in that. What do you hope to pass on to to your kids? And it doesn't have to be like this major. Here's my 5-year plan. Or whatever.
The biggest question ever.
Yeah. But it's like, hey, tomorrow. When I see them next, man. Here's something that God's telling me. Yeah, I need to hear the still small voice and pass on to him.
That, I think, presence. Yeah, like I want to be a present person to them. I think that is a remarkable gift that God blesses us with, and I think it takes a lifetime to try and do that well for anybody that you're committing yourself to. So I would love for them to remember me as somebody who is with them.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
because I think, and I don't mean to speak any ill towards you or anybody else, but there likely, doesn't mean there is, but a lot of times those kids are going to go through times where they don't want you to be as present.
Yes.
And it's not as important to them.
Yep.
And I'm going through a little bit of that right now.
Oh,
but
man.
I'm thankfully I've got the age range enough where I've gone through it and then it comes back around again. So I have hope for the ones that now are like, well, why don't you want to spend time with me? I know I'm not a cool teenager like your friends, but it's like, as they're little kids, that's when you really, especially speak into them, so that when they do hit those ages of, okay, when it's psychologically true that their parents are not as important to them as their friends are, and that's okay. It's just a natural thing that they go through. And once again, I'm not speaking into you that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying
they're at the age for me where we're their favorite. Mom and dad are their favorite,
absolutely.
and that obviously isn't going to. Like I was a teenager too.
I
know.
It lasts a long time, but it does come to a place where that's not true, and that's okay.
Yep.
But they come back around to they appreciate, somewhere down a little bit further down the road what you've done and who you are when you do pour into their lives like
That's
that.
cool.
So yeah,
that's huge.
I'm sure you've experienced.
I'm right there, with a 17-year-old, a 13-year-old, and an 8-year-old.
Okay.
I mean, we're in different phases every moment of the
bet.
day. Yeah.
My two youngest are 14 and 15 now. So after this summer, they'll be a freshman and a sophomore in
Yeah.
high school. Well, the sophomore, up until not long ago, I mean like 2 to 3 years ago, we would walk into a Walmart or a Target or something, and he would hold my hand. Like, he's my buddy. He's
Yeah.
like this. He's like, this is my best friend,
Yeah.
my dad. I'm like, this is my best friend, my kid. And then something hit where he became 14 to 15,
Yep.
and it was like, what's up, Dad?
Bro.
And so I'm waiting for that best friend guy to come back around.
It's gonna
And
be a minute.
It might be a while. Now my 14-year-old still is like, I am like her world, and she's still. But I know it's probably going to change. It doesn't mean it necessarily will, because I'm sure there's adults out there with older kids who that didn't happen for them. That's great, but the majority of the time that's going to happen.
Yeah.
The teenager's going to be too cool for school, and you're not. But right now, I'm still appreciating my 14-year-old who's about to be a freshman in high school. Like, I still, maybe I'm not cool, but she still loves me to death.
Exactly right.
And that might change, and maybe it won't. But I'm prepared that it is, because I think it'll come back around. I've seen it. I've seen that happen.
That's awesome.
That's great.
This is Rewrite, Stories of New Life in Jesus. I'm Jonathan Unthank. If you'd like to join a community of listeners who enjoy hearing the life stories of Christian music artists and influencers, then join the Rewrite text group by texting the word Rewrite. That's REWRITE to 81891. But more importantly, if you'd like to dig deeper into your own relationship with Jesus, you can begin that journey today by texting his name, Jesus, to 81891. God bless you. Join me next time for another episode of Rewrite.